So, first of all, on behalf of the Hiram O. Taylor Post 189 American Legion and our commander, Jerry Boynton, in the back, I'd like to welcome you to our Memorial Day service, and thank you for joining us on this marginal day today. Just a quick reminder, and I think you've seen it on Facebook enough if you look at that, the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day is held November 11th every year, and that's for those veterans who are currently living and served in our armed forces. Memorial Day today is when we remember those who sacrificed their lives for our country. So that's Memorial Day, and we're honoring those who served and sacrificed their lives. We're going to start off with the invocation by our chaplain, Mike Manier.
Let us pray. Almighty God, giver of all victories, we thank Thee for the opportunities which abide in our land, for Thy guidance in the hour of peril, and Thy tender love in times of need. Help us remember with reverence the valor and devotion of our departed comrades, not only those whose bodies consecrate our country's soil, but also those who sleep beyond the seas, and those others whose resisted places will not be known until the last day, when the deep will give up its dead. O God, teach us to honor them by ever cherish the ideas for which they fought. Keep us steadfast in the cause of human rights and liberties, of law and order, and true Americanism. Give us the power to see and the will to do right. Grant that the American Legion may preserve the high ideas for which our comrades died. May Thy merciful blessing rest upon those that left behind. Keep us forever affirming righteousness, humble of heart, and unselfish in purpose. Amen.
Amen.
This day is sacred with the almost visible presence of those who have gone before us. We honor the memory of those who gave their lives in service to our country, and of those others who have dropped their burdens by the wayside of life and gone to their eternal rest. May the ceremonies of today deepen our reverence for our departed friends and comrades. Let us renew our pledge of loyalty to our country and its flag. Let us resolve by word and deed to emphasize the privilege and duty of patriotism. So now we're going to have a band selection. We are fortunate again to have the Al Youngman Band, led by Joe Jane Gregorio.
Thank you. You guys.
We are fortunate today to have with us John Harris, an 8th grade student at Choxet, who will recite the Gettysburg Address.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The war will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what we did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here thus far have nobly advanced. It is rather for us here to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for much they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
It's now my pleasure to introduce the chair of our select board, Kirsten Newman.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you to our veterans and our police and fire departments for organizing our event today. I'm also joined by my fellow select board members, Maureen Cranston and David Smith, who are hiding back there somewhere. Good morning, Sterling and Sterling friends and family. As we gather here today on this solemn occasion of Memorial Day, we come together as a community to honor and pay tribute to the brave souls who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. It is a day of remembrance, reflection, and reverence. A day where we pause to recognize the profound debt of gratitude we owe to those who have laid down their lives to protect the freedoms and values that we hold dear. On this day, we stand in solidarity with the families who have lost loved ones, who have borne the heavy burden of sacrifice that we may continue to live in peace and security. We cannot begin to fathom the depth of their grief, but we can offer our support, our respect, and our heartfelt appreciation for the sacrifices that they have endured. The men and women we honor today were more than soldiers. They were sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, friends and neighbors. They were individuals with dreams and aspirations, with hopes for the future, with families who loved them dearly. They were ordinary people who did extraordinary things, who answered the call of duty with courage and conviction, who gave their all for the greater good. As the daughter of a Vietnam veteran, I grew up watching my father freeze in fear when helicopters would fly overhead, and learning to recognize when he was overcome by grief at the remembrance of his fallen brothers. As I got older, he would tell me more and more about his experiences. And what struck me the most were the stories of carrying those who had already lost their lives to safety, so that their families could have closure and be given the chance to lay their loved ones to rest at home and say a proper goodbye. That amount of care and bravery should teach us that the true measure of gratitude lies not only in words spoken or moments of silence observed, but in the actions we take each and every day. It is how we treat one another, how we uphold the values of justice and equality, how we strive to build a better world for future generations. Let us never forget the debt we owe to those who have gone before us, who have given their last full measure of devotion in defense of freedom. May their courage inspire us, their sacrifice humble us, and their memory live on in our hearts forevermore. Their courage and sacrifice are what we remember on Memorial Day. As we honor them today, let us pledge to keep their legacy alive. Let's live with purpose and hold on to the values that they fought for. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce someone that probably everybody in the room already knows, but that's our State Representative, Megan Kilcoyne.
Thanks, Ed, and thank you all for being here today. I always appreciate the opportunity to be with you all on Memorial Day. I came to this parade since I was a child, so to be able to speak before you is certainly a humbling experience, but one that I treasure. You know, Memorial Day, despite maybe some believing that it's a 3-day weekend where we get to have cookouts and spend time with our family, as wonderful that is, it's not a holiday that is designed to be a celebration. It's an occasion both for grief and celebration, but in light of that time that we get to spend with our communities and families, we also have to reflect on the tragic loss of life and remember the courageousness of so many who have served in the military. For those that have served, this day holds the utmost significance, while also giving the rest of us, the opportunity to pay tribute and remember the lives that have been lost. For those that may not be aware, next month on June, that will mark the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, which occurred on June 6th in 1944. During that invasion, the first wave of Allied forces swarmed Normandy Beach, which were heavily fortified by Nazi forces. On that day, more than 4,400 Allied troops were killed. Of that number, 2,500 were Americans. For many of us, we grew up with stories of that greatest generation, of stories of bravery and courage for those that may have served either in the European theater or the Pacific theater, and even stories of the home front, where families sacrificed the everyday lives that they had to support the war effort and to support their country as they fought utmost evil. This is the 80 years ago, those that served in that war were at the youngest teens. So those that are still with us today are likely likely approaching 100 years old. A few months ago, I had the honor of attending an Iwo Jima Remembrance Day at the State House. And for the first time since that event had been inaugurated, there were no veterans left in the state of Massachusetts who served at Iwo Jima. So on this Memorial Day, I ask you to take special remembrance of those World War II veterans as we are quickly approaching a time where none will be with us. But it's important to remember that in addition to those veterans, for generations after, there are people of this country that served our nation in foreign lands across the world to defend democracy and freedom. Whether it was in the Vietnam War in the 1970s or other conflicts later, or even more recently in Afghanistan and Iraq, there are so many that have taken that ultimate sacrifice, that have taken that ultimate challenge to defend what they hold dear and what we hold dear. In fact, just when I was in my lifetime, when I was at Chalkset Middle School right down the road, I sat with my classmates as we watched on the TV screen the Twin Towers fall to terrorist attacks. We didn't know then that that would lead to a conflict that would span years, and that even within my own classroom, there were people, men and women, who as adults, young adults, would join our armed forces to serve our country. I would also be remiss if I didn't take a moment to remember our very own Bob Temple, who passed away earlier this year, who was a veteran of the Army in the Vietnam War and dedicated his life to serving this community and serving the veterans here in town. I think we'll always miss him at these events, but I think that with your presence here, his memory certainly lives on. So I think one thing that I always strive to do in my life, and that I would encourage you all to do, is to make sure to not just take today to reflect on the service of our veterans and our military. There are so many ways that we can honor their contributions, whether it's even just sharing stories that you've heard, maybe from your own family, saying a prayer, or doing what we can to make sure that the community that they sacrificed everything to protect is alive and well. When we think about the American values of those that fought in defense of us, we think of duty, loyalty, and courage. So those are just a few ways, I think, that we can try to live by those values and make sure that we're honoring those that serve our nation. I know for my part, as your state representative, I pledge myself to continue to work to support the veterans in this state. But the only way that we can do that is to make sure that we are reflecting the community. And your presence here today shows how much we care about our veterans here in Massachusetts and how important and critical it is to work to continue to make sure that our veterans are protected. Just last week in the House, I am proud to say we did pass veterans legislation called the HERO Act. The HERO Bill stands for Honoring, Empowering, and Recognizing Our Service Members and Veterans, and it expands access for benefits for veterans across the Commonwealth, including broadening the definition of veterans, improving access to mental health, and in a variety of ways that will make their economic lives just a little bit easier. It's a small way that we can ensure that those that have served our country are thanked when they return home. I am humbled at everybody that came out today. I think it's a testament to this town's commitment to honoring our veterans, and I'm so grateful to be with you, all of you today, as we carry forward the legacy of those that have made the ultimate sacrifice, and we all together to commit to build a nation of strong, resilient communities that does not forget its past. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and again, thank you so much for being here today.
Okay, now I'm very pleased to announce our next guest, who will be the lead guest speaker today. The individual, again, who many of you, if you've been in town for a couple of years, may already know him and his parents. So let me start reading a little bit about this individual. Colonel Jason Overton, to my left, is currently assigned as the Assistant Adjutant General for Intergovernmental and Legislative Affairs for the Massachusetts Army National Guard. He previously served as a commander of the 26th Maneuver Enhancement Yankee Brigade. Colonel Overton's mobilizations include Operation Enduring Freedom Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom Iraq, and Operation New Dawn Iraq and Kuwait. In his current assignment as the Assistant AG, Colonel Overton handles senior leader level strategic initiatives, intergovernmental affairs, and serves as the Legislative Director of the Massachusetts National Guard. His most recent professional military education includes He has a Master of Arts in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College. His decorations include Legion of Merit with Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star with Bronze Oak Leaf Cluster, Meritorious Service Medal with 5 Bronze Oak Leaf Clusters, and the Combat Action Badge. He is also a recipient of the Ancient Order of St. Christopher and the Order of Sergeant Carey. Colonel Overton was raised in Sterling and currently resides in Hanover, Mass. With his wife Mandy and 3 children, Josette, Grady, and Lyndon. It's an honor for me to introduce to you Colonel Jason Overton.
Good afternoon. There's a little open space up front if anybody wants to jump in, so we're not getting anything outside. Can everyone hear me? Okay. So, good afternoon, honored guests, fellow veterans, family, friends, and most importantly, residents of Sterling. As you heard, I am Colonel Jason Overton, and I'm humbled to speak to you on this Memorial Day to honor the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces who have proudly served our nation and have made the ultimate sacrifice to keep our country free. For more than 230 years, from the Revolutionary War to the global war on terrorism, our military has always been willing to fight, and in many cases die for our freedom and the way of life that we enjoy. Growing up in Sterling, I look out at this crowd and remember standing in it while growing up, like my classmate Tim Bluff was back there. So it feels like yesterday, even though I just celebrated my 29th year of service last month. Memorial Day comes and we often are grateful for a day off, and that's okay. Memorial Day should be a day of rest, a day to enjoy the freedom and beauty that is America in springtime. As we do, however, we must remember to give thanks to those who cannot be here with us, those who gave up their springtimes so that we can enjoy our freedom. Today is not a celebration, but a day of remembrance and a reminder at the cost of freedom. Although there are different versions of how Memorial Day began, one story goes that grieving families, both northern and southern, began decorating the graves of their lost soldiers with flowers and wreaths. These informal honors led to the first Memorial Day observance in Waterloo, New York in May 5th, 1866. And then, with each passing year and subsequent conflicts, we've continued to honor our service members. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Any nation that does not honor its heroes will long endure." So let's always remember that freedom is not free. No words can adequately describe the debt we owe the men and women we honor here today. So we gather to recognize their service, to remember their selfless sacrifices they've made in honor of our country, and to make our own commitment to them. All gave some and some gave all is something we've all heard. We honor those service members that paid the ultimate sacrifice on battlefields throughout the world, but we also honor those that returned that are no longer with us after their faithful service. Every moment we live in freedom, we owe to them. We are here today to honor our heroes, to remember their achievements, their courage, their dedication, and to say thank you for their sacrifices. In the words of General Mark Milley, whether they were killed in combat or action, killed in a training accident, died by natural causes or cancer or some other debilitating illness, no matter how they passed, they lived for something, they lived for our country. We can and should talk about heroism and sacrifice. And if you flip through our nation's history, you will be inundated with accounts of bravery that still resonate deep with us decades later. Like Medal of Honor recipient Captain Thomas Hudner of Fall River, Massachusetts, who crashed his plane trying to save his wingman, Ensign Jesse Brown, during the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir in the Korean War. And PFC John Barnes of Boston, Massachusetts, who shielded other wounded soldiers from an enemy grenade in Vietnam. Or Staff Sergeant Jared Monty of Abington, Massachusetts, who was mortally wounded, sacrificing his own life, trying to save one of his wounded soldiers in Afghanistan. And so many more. We are humbled by the tremendous courage shown by our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coast Guardmen throughout our history, from the beginning of the days of the United States to the battlefields of Afghanistan and Iraq. There is no doubt that these service members and our veterans have paved the way for all the freedoms we have today. They came from all walks of life, all nationalities and races, from cities to small towns across America and across Massachusetts. Bottom line, they all shared several fundamental qualities. They possessed courage, commitment, selflessness, and a dedication to duty. This seemingly large group of service members and veterans is actually a small band of brothers and sisters. And after 2 decades of a volunteer force, currently less than half of 1% of the American population serves in the United States military. No one has to leave their homes and fight on distant battlefields. Across the years, many didn't even volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be part of something bigger than themselves. They were called to defend us. They were ordinary people, friends and neighbors who responded in extraordinary ways. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect a nation that had given them and us so much. While overseas, they carried our freedoms and way of life in their rucksacks, defending what was dear to them back home. We have awarded medals to many service members, added their names to monuments, and named buildings for them to honor them for their bravery. But nothing can replace the hole they left behind, and no number of medals and ribbons can comfort the loved ones left behind. They have endured the pain of separation, the anxiety of deployment, the grief of loss, yet they have remained steadfast in their commitment to our nation and its values. Today, people throughout the country will gather to remember, to honor and pay gratitude for those who served our country. Our gathering is one across the nation today. It's a way we can honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live in freedom. As the flags blow in the wind today, know that it is a tribute to our American service members that are not here with us. As a veteran and proud American, your presence here today makes me proud that I know we remember. As I think about this, I can only say one day is not enough. Today is a day for reflection, a day for giving thanks, but it should also be a day of resolution. Every day we enjoy the liberties paid for with the lives of our fallen. We must resolve to honor their sacrifice in our daily lives. And how do we do this? We remember not to forget, and just as important, to teach our children what this country has because of brave men and women. Teach our children what our country and community stand for. Teach them to uphold the values of their ancestors. They are the future of our country. They must know how to implement these values, agree and disagree respectfully, celebrate their differences, care for their neighbors, and look to a place to support each other. Support the families that we honor today. They too have sacrificed on the altar of freedom. Support our living veterans. They too have risked their lives. Though they overcame a return home, they lost many friends who served beside them in the jungles, deserts, pastures, and cities where they earned their freedom. Let us also reaffirm our commitment to support today's service members who are defending freedom as we speak. Perhaps the best way to honor those who have given everything for us is to give back to our nation and community. This presents an opportunity for reflection and renewal. It prompts us to consider the selflessness of men and women who proudly serve and what we can do. Some of you may interpret this as a call and invitation to join the military, and that is certainly an excellent way to give back, but there are many others. Volunteer your time with the youth group, church group, school, coach youth sports, vote in our elections, run for office, and for the sake of those who gave their lives, earn what they have done for us by being the best citizens that we can be together. And lastly, remember what our flag stands for and why we remove our hat and salute it in its presence. In fact, As you look at the American flag, I ask you not look at it, but look into it. Behind each stitch is a service member that has served this nation, a freedom that they have given us, and a look of hope for the future. When I look at the flag, I see my family. I see our communities. I see Lake Washington, where I grew up. I see my soldiers and friends that I've lost over the years, and I see free citizens walking on the streets of the Commonwealth. Look into it, and what do you see? Thank you again for having me today and attending this ceremony. God bless you and your families. God bless our fallen, and God bless the United States of America, lest we forget.
So I'm sure you've seen the individuals wearing poppies, which my mistake, I don't have one on today, but we are passing them out at the front, out in the front of the church if you'd like one. But do you know the history of it? So the history is it started back in World War I, and it reminds us of those that did not make it to the war and gave their all in service to our country. There's a poem that's written about it that I think talks a little bit about the flower, and it was written by a Canadian officer and a surgeon, and his friend, Lieutenant Holmes, passed away, well actually was killed in action, and after he was buried, the surgeon was sitting there looking across the cemetery, and again this is back in 1915, and he was noticing that poppies were growing up among the graves. And so he wrote this little poem that's now become pretty famous, and some of you may know it, but if you listen to it, I think it tells a story. In Flanders fields, the poppies glow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard among the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. A good poem that tells you about the poppy and why we wear it and what it means.